Welcome to Unleashed Opinion, boldly challenging the powers that be while keeping liberals in their place with conservative ideals and common sense solutions.
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Unleashed Opinion. We're live and worldwide once again. Hey, we see we already got some people tuning in already. We got Jason Mixer out there, Scott Zimmerman, Dan Lanning, Steve Snyder. All right, super. You guys are kicking it off real good already. As usual, big thank you out to our service members, keeping us free and safe, putting your lives and your family's lives on hold for the benefit of the rest of us. We greatly appreciate it. Uh-oh, I got to turn this down. Turn that thing off. I thought I was hearing something. Big thank you to John for putting everything together for us. Our listeners out there, people who send us text messages and such to give us topics to talk about. Every little bit helps. The guys out there in the garage on Route 125, you know I'll be by a little bit later. So the Fulton County crew, guys, I'm afraid we won't be taking any calls tonight. So it's just me and I got a guest on here tonight, and I'll introduce here shortly. First responders doing what you do. You're not always appreciated as much as you probably should be. You're always there when somebody needs you. Hopefully, I don't need you anytime soon. So, but greatly appreciated when we want to recognize you on this show. Corrections staff, WICC in particular, Illinois River, both places I worked at, the correctional centers. And okay, let's get started from here. Got a friend that, if you remember, Rosanna Polito called in three times a while back, and she introduced me to a guy by the name of Frank George. We've got George Skyped in from Arizona this evening. And Frank, if you'd give us a little rundown of yourself and what you've been doing on your shows out there, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Steve, thank you for the opportunity to spend time with yourself and your audience. I run a little show on Facebook. It's called Radio X. We broadcast on Sundays at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. To let you know a little bit about myself, well, I am actually Cuban-born and came to the United States in 1959. That was a couple of years before Fidel Castro took over, and then shortly after announced to the people of the island that they were all going to go communist. So I was spared having to live under communism. I have spent my entire life in the United States. I am a naturalized American citizen. I did at one time carry a green card. I had no objection to being referred to as an alien because that is the terminology that is used with that. Finally, in my 20s, I turned in the green card and became an American citizen and was very, very proud to have become one with the American people. A great culture, a nation the likes of which has never been seen on this earth, but a nation which may be extinguished very soon unless we act appropriately against all that is coming up against it, and there is a great deal. I have been a Minuteman. I was one of the first to go to the southern border in Arizona back when Jim Gilchrist, the founder of the Minutemen, made that call. And on my way down to the border, my wife and I heard then President George W. Bush say, "We don't need these vigilantes." That was an eye-opener as to what that president was all about. He broke our hearts, but we were uplifted by Representative Tom Tancredo, who was there in Arizona with us. And we fulfilled our obligation of being on the border and seeing what was going on and learning. And I returned a number of occasions with the Texas Minutemen. I did border duty out there and met a number of interesting folks. We also did a tremendous number of protests in California against illegal immigration, and there I learned even more about what was going on.
Yeah, why don't you elaborate on that a little bit, like we talked a little bit earlier, because I had no idea.
About what was happening in California?
Yeah, with the communist.
Oh, yes. It was an eye-opener for me. And we're talking, I don't know how many years back. I don't know if this goes back 15 years or what. Shortly after the Minuteman thing was put together. And I had been invited to a protest that was being put together by a group called Save Our State in the city of Alhambra, California. These were very contentious events, and this was one of the first that we had been to. And I was driving into town with my wife, and there was these huge groups of people on opposite sides of the road, on each sidewalk. It was just a huge number of folks, hundreds of people. And there were lots of police to keep them apart. And I said to my wife, look, honey, we have as many as they do. Well, when I got out of the car, I realized that those people who favor illegal immigration and communism were the large groups we were looking at. And our group was a very small group of people standing on a corner. And so police helped us to get through, and we were physically attacked. The police made us walk on the sidewalk right next to these people, and I objected, and the cop told me I had to do what he said. This, by the way, was a very small, brown, Mexican-American type cop, and I wondered where his loyalties lay. And from the crowd, a woman jabbed my wife. She had a small American flag, and she hit her back with it. And some big guy stuck his arm out and grabbed my left forearm and took the flesh and just kneaded it like that. And I was able to break away. And I thought about punching him because I'm pretty good about that. I realized that what would happen is the cops would probably take me in, and this is what they wanted. When we went to our corner and we were there amongst our own, there were all these groups of people holding these huge Mao Zedong banners and communist stuff. It was unbelievable. People wearing Che Guevara shirts, Che Guevara being the well-known communist that's adored in some of the university campuses throughout the United States. He was a murderer, actually.
Right.
But we thought, Steve, that we had won this thing with communism, and we were shocked to find out that communism was alive and well, and we were witnessing them being supportive of illegal immigration because it is a tool that they want to use to topple the United States, and it's working very well, particularly after having had our first communist, anti-American president, Barack Obama.
But it's just, well, for one thing, I'm glad you came to the United States and you did it properly, and that this illegal immigration, especially what's going on today, has got to be extremely frustrating for you. And I cannot imagine how you feel about that. But you know, and that's, you know, with anybody, is if you come here and do it right, this is you and the people that do it right should be extremely upset about these people coming over here, and the talk of amnesty and all this other crap should really chap your ass. So
it riles me in a tremendous way. I remember being about 35 years of age when then President Ronald Reagan signed the first amnesty, and he would later say that he was sorry that he did it, that it had been a mistake, and I figured it to be so right at the moment. For some of the people in the United States, the amnesty seemed to be an act of mercy. For the third world, what he had signed were articles of surrender to them because the stream never stopped. It kept coming in. And if there's something that people would might want to look up about illegal immigration and why we have a border patrol, to my understanding, many, many years ago, we didn't have any kind of border group defending there. But what happened was the Spanish flu that killed millions around the world. There developed a knowledge of the fact you get somebody come in sick, and a lot of people can wind up dead.
Sure.
And that's a fact. That's just one simple reason for finding out who's coming in. And then, of course, there are folks that are just plain old evil. We did find a number of Middle Easterners coming in through that southern border. And we know that they have a militarily trained fifth column here. Now they even have their own congressman, Elon, for example. Unbelievable, Steve, that this would happen in the United States. Unbelievable. But there it is.
Yeah, you're right. We've got several training camps for ISIS training camps in the United States. Deacon did a number on that. I want to say somewhere between 8 and 22 throughout the country. One of them, I think, is just across the Arizona border or Texas border. I don't remember which. I'd have to talk to Deacon for sure on that. But, you know, President Trump went out there and said, look, this is a crisis at the border. We're going to shut these things down. We're going to do this. We're going to hold on to these people. And the left just went crazy with that, saying, oh, my God, you can't do this. Well, it seemed kind of funny just, you know, after these children died being detained, that Chuck Schumer was out there getting behind the podium and says, you, Mr. President, you can change this. You alone can do this. And then when he did something about it, didn't like that either. And it seems kind of funny. It was a crisis one day, and then when he did something, then when he says it's a crisis, it's not. It's so, everything's so anti-Trump?
It's not so much anti-Trump, I think, as it is that they are anti-Trump because he stands in the way, and it's a good thing that he's there. I think we're blessed to have him there. I have some grave differences with him. I am very much pro-Trump and was one of the few in Wyoming who wanted him. Out there, I don't know why, they wanted Ted Cruz, and they wanted the Cuban from Florida. I forget what his name is.
Marco Rubio.
Rubio, yes. And I was invited by the Republican Party to go and represent Donald Trump, which I did, and met the others. But Wyoming did not go for Donald Trump, and that was a shame, just a total shame. But the Democrat Party has become a Marxist entity, as I see it. I see who they're fielding for 2020. These people are vetted. They have to go before the Democratic Party and say, I want to run for president of the United States. And they go and they say, yeah, you're wonderful. You can run as a Democrat. And all of them, you look at it, and they're Marxists. They're Marxist, super socialists. They're pro-illegal alien. They're pro-open borders. They are for the death of the United States of America, as any rational mind would define it. And I don't know how this is going to play out. If something powerful and great doesn't happen, doesn't transpire, we will be rolled into a Marxist entity. We will become that. The biggest, I think, tip will be when they actually work something out to take your Second Amendment rights from you and seize your guns. Right there, that should be the start of the Second American Revolution, and I mean it. I really mean it.
Oh, I agree with you. And we've said on this show several times, if you lose the Second Amendment, the rest will fall like dominoes in pretty short order. And
Yep.
what do they got? 18 people in the Democratic Party running for president now, and how they call themselves Democrats is beyond me, because they should just come up, be up front, and say, "Okay, we're socialists. This is the path we want to take, and this is what we want to do." So we'll call ourselves Democratic Socialists or Democrats, whatever the case may be. But when we get into office, it's going to be socialist policies we're going to push. So I don't know why they're trying to fool the people that don't pay that close attention.
Well, they're trying to roll everybody in under their brand of politics, and in particular, the illegal aliens do vote fraudulently. We see a lot of areas of the United States turning blue where they were formerly red, or going purple because there's even amount on both sides or so. But a lot of this revolution that the so-called socialist, Marxist, progressives want to keep going after Barack Obama, they depend on these fraudulent votes, and they depend on making citizens out of these third world people and promising them things and getting their votes. And before you know it, our votes are nullified, and we are rolled into this socialist thing. I personally think that when Barack Obama was in for 8 years, he put in every communist he could find into every position that he could fill. And I think that this is what we're witnessing now that we have Donald Trump, and you see these fights that are happening, and judges that nullify a lot of what he wants to do in the border and such. It is because Barack Obama did his best to fulfill his self-proclaimed obligation to Marxism. I really think that's what's happened here.
Well, you see a lot of things that Obama did during the years. A lot of stuff was kind of slid by under the radar, And now, and like you're talking about now, you're starting to see a lot more of this stuff surface because you were unaware of it before. Because, well, let's face it, the media's on the left side for the most part. So if they don't want you to know about it, you're probably not going to hear about it. So yeah, the things he implemented are starting to really surface, and I'm not seeing any good things that he's done, actually. Not any.
No, because he was a total negative. He's a complete total negative unless you talk to communists. And I did have dinner with a communist just because this woman is a communist. And I wanted to understand her particular point of view. And she's a democratic socialist activist, a member of the DSA, as they call it. Those are activists, and they are Marxists in nature. And I asked her what the difference was between her socialism and the communism of the Soviet Union. She said, well, there everything was centrally planned and owned. Here we would like in our own areas for businesses to be owned by everybody. And in other words, if you open Steve's Golf Shop, you're going to have 50 partners, who co-own the place with you. So you're not really going to own anything. They repackage something that doesn't work and is a total misery maker. I've got stories about what Cubans underwent on that island nation when it became communist, and it was an affluent country at one time. There were even periods in time when the Cuban peso was actually worth more than the American dollar for just brief amounts of time. But it was not really a third world country. It was actually first world status. And you know what? It has disintegrated into a nothingness.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because it really doesn't have to be that way.
No, it doesn't.
Because from what I understand, it can be a very beautiful place.
It can be a very beautiful place, and it can be very affluent and create a lot of prosperity, which it did. But once communism came in, nobody was allowed to do anything. They have spies on every single block, so they can know who's going into your house, and you're not allowed to use the internet. Well, a little bit of it there is more now. And since everything is centrally planned, everything fails. It's hard to get bread. It's hard to get butter. It's hard to get shoes. You walk into a supermarket here, and your senses are assaulted by the many choices of just underarm deodorant. Which one are you? Which one are you?
Right, exactly.
You go into a communist country, and you just hope that there's one little can or something of underarm deodorant left.
Well, I went into Walmart the other day to buy a bar of soap, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know. There's racks of it. I don't even know which one I want again. I'm pretty sure I don't want the spring honey something. I don't want that scent, I'm pretty sure. So.
Yeah, but that is the beauty of freedom and free market capitalism. It works. It works really well. And yet there are innumerable entities within the United States that want to put that to death, and in its place they want to resurrect this people's revolution, which will bring tremendous misery, believe me.
Oh, there's no doubt. There's no doubt.
These homegrown communists here in the United States, they won't like it, and all they're going to say is that, well, they did communism wrong. They did communism wrong in Cuba. They did it wrong in North Korea. They did it wrong in Russia. They did it wrong in China. But the Nordic countries, that's what they're pointing at now.
Well, you know how it's going to end also. And it seems funny, we've talked about this before, is you say socialism has never worked anywhere in the world, but the people on the left say, well, that's because we haven't done it yet. Well,
exactly. Exactly. They're going to do it right where everybody else failed, and they will fail too.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We was talking about Chris Kobach there before we started the show. I seen him on Tucker Carlson last night, and he come away with 3 ideas on what to do with our border problem. He said, number one, we should publish the final version of the regulation that settles the Flores settlement. He said it supersedes the Flores settlement. Basically, it would is how the United States can detain an entire family unit together, so you wouldn't have to separation of families and detain them as long as you want. And he says that could be done tomorrow. Well, see, that's one of the left's biggest arguments is you're separating families, which that really confuses me too. They're blaming it on Trump. Trump's separating these kids from their families. Well, I didn't see Trump go down to the Honduras or any place else to bring these kids up there to bring them across the border to then separate them. They did that to themselves. So how. Of course, the left is pretty good at blaming, anything that's not their idea on somebody else. So I don't know how they blame that on him, because these people did this themselves. They knew this was going to happen. They're relying on the sympathy of the people on the left to do something about it, and it's working. Not as good as they had hoped, but for the most part, Trump's throwing a big wrench in things, that's for sure. And like you say, really glad he's there. I'd hate to think what happened if Hillary had won.
Oh, God.
Exactly.
But talking about the separation of families and such, you're right. And then the other aspect of that is Barack Obama was doing the same thing, and they didn't cry about that.
Exactly. They don't want to talk about that.
Their voices about that. And then the other thing is it's just general practice to separate the children from the adults when you arrest and take someone in. You don't want children with adults. And a lot of these adults that come here with these children are not even related to them. All of it is a scam. It is run by the Mexican drug cartels and their human trafficking operations. They know that the way that the laws are working currently, you bring in a child and that's your passport into the United States.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And I like Chris Kobach. I met him up in Washington. I went to an event called Hold Their Feet to the Fire a number of years ago. And he was there. I was very pleased to meet him in person, as well as Tom Tancredo. And I forget the gentleman's name. They just pulled him out of a bunch of committees over something relating to white or something like that. He's a representative from Iowa. Yes.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. I can't think of his name either. That
so he's a very, very nice man. I saw him speak in Nevada, Cashman Center, addressing the issue of illegal immigration. Let me tell you, he is an American powerhouse. He's right on everything, and they have done him a tremendous wrong with this thing of pulling him from committees and chastising him for, I think what he said was, well, when did it become a crime to say white supremacist or white nationalist or something? He just wanted to know what those things were, and they stomped all over him for him. And he's Steve King.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yes, that's right.
Fantastic, great man.
Another thing Chris Kobach had said is the second thing to do would be deploy thousands of FEMA trailers either to the border cities or to military bases in Texas and Arizona and set up processing centers instead of turning loose those bogus asylum applicants onto the American streets, never to be seen again. He said, let's put them into mobile homes, let's process their claims, let's ship judges in, have the claims processed right there. As soon as their claim is denied, put them on a passenger plane and fly them back where they came from. He said word will get back to the villages, and hopefully that'll slow things down. So I hadn't thought about using the FEMA trailers for something like that because we see the videos, and the first videos that came out was from the Obama era, which the media didn't want to talk about that. But that's one answer to housing these people in the meantime.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't want to house them. I want the military on the border with orders to shoot. When I was in the Army, as part of basic training, we were to do guard duty, and you say, halt, who goes there? Maybe they've changed the verbiage. I was in there a long time ago. And, hey, if they don't obey orders, you shoot. And that is the most effective way of keeping people from coming into the United States. But it is not done. Now, what a lot of folks say is you cannot deploy the military to the border in the fullness of their capacity. They are there now, but they're not allowed to stop anybody. They do things like make the roads clear so the Border Patrol can drive, and they put concertina wire. All those things are very useful, but more useful would be to have them there with orders to shoot somebody who doesn't obey. They always claim posse comitatus. Well, you can't deploy the military to the border because of posse comitatus. Listen to this. It isn't so much that we are being invaded by illegal aliens. We have been invaded for years now. A simple dictionary definition of the word invasion, you'll find out that it doesn't involve tanks or people coming over in a military column or with rifles or anything. It is simply the occupation of land illegally, which is what these people are doing, and they are here by the millions. I don't know why this president, to my dissatisfaction, Donald Trump, has not had this conversation with the American people. Folks, we were invaded a long time ago. Even Yale says that we have up to 22 million illegal aliens in this country, which a lot of us with common sense would say it's more like 30 to 60 million or 40 million. Nobody knows. There's so many of them. But the case could be made that we have been invaded, and we have to rectify this. To me, this is another form of warfare that's been unleashed on us, and it should be known to people that we're getting this influx. By the way, there's a huge caravan coming. They're calling it the mother of all caravans. And a lot of this has been orchestrated from within the United States by communists who happen to be immigration attorneys and such, and they want to break the system. And pretty much they have. We are, $22 trillion in debt, which means that our currency is backed by I don't know what. I don't know what. We're to become the Weimar Republic pretty soon if something isn't done. This nation is in terrible trouble. It's on its way down. It's on its way to being extinguished. It's facing enemies from within and from without like never before. And now's the time to step up, which is why I say to people, look into a constitutional militia. Make it legal. Let it be constitutional, because we can't have that. If you can't find a good one, start one. Train like you're supposed to. You're part of the United States constitutional militia. But we got to get ready for something, because a lot of folks that I talk to, they're saying we're on the road to civil war. And I agree. It's something that I don't want. As a little kid in Cuba, I did witness some of what that civil war was. And you talk to some guy during the day, and in the middle of the night, you hear gunfire, and in the morning, you'd find him in a ditch. And that is what that's like as people start going at each other. And I don't want to see that happen in this country, but we are headed down that road, in my opinion.
Sure, I think you're right. We're being doing ourselves in from inside. I mean, like the people you're talking about. For one, we're not enforcing any laws, which we've seen under the past president for the most part. These sanctuary cities just completely blow my mind. How you can do that, and so we got people that are wanting this to happen. It appears so. And as far as deploying the military to the border and shooting first, when they don't know. Okay, I'm good with that, but you and I both know that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But one thing about doing it that way is word will travel back to these countries very fast. If you cross the border, you will be shot.
And that stops it. That will stop it immediately.
Yes,
Look,
it will.
You post some signs, United States sovereign territory, no trespassing. Trespassers will be shot. Put it in Spanish and Chinese and in Russian, and some Middle Eastern Farsi language or something, because they're all coming over. And do it, because it is worthwhile protecting this country. I know a good number of the so-called angel moms who have lost husbands, children, everything to illegal alien crime. I know Agnes Gibney. I know Sabine Durden. They wind up in the president's office. And I have asked them recently, do you think this guy's genuine? Because I have questions. We're 3 years into his presidency. It's worse than ever before. And they tell me, yeah, they think that he's genuine. Some are beginning to become disappointed. There is a concept known as attrition through enforcement, that you don't really have to deploy the military or go door to door within the cities. And it's simply enforce all of your immigration laws, get your local police involved to help out. And these people will start self-deporting. They will. They'll start going away by themselves, and whatever is left over, you're going to have to round up. But none of that is happening. Instead, what's happening is their numbers are growing, and we, as Americans, are dying. It's almost now to the point that if you pay attention to the Democrats, you're a hideous monster for being white and for being a patriotic American. That's it. They want to extinguish you. White privilege. I've never seen white privilege. I never have.
Well, I haven't seen it either. In fact, there's several jobs I couldn't get because I was a minority some type. So
exactly.
So yeah, the white privilege has never worked well for me. So
No.
the other thing he's talking about is the numbers of people coming to this country illegally are increasing, and they are by huge amounts. And I don't understand why. I mean, we've got Trump as president, who would be, like I say, a lot better than Hillary would have ever been, but they're still coming across here, and maybe I just didn't pay attention, but I don't recall large caravans, one right after another, trying to come into this country. I don't understand why we're having a problem with these huge numbers.
Well, it's happening because the Democrats and the Marxists have organized to make it so. They have actually gone to Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and told people what to do and what to say to come to the United States, and that they grew those caravans. This is a project that came from within the United States. It wasn't beyond our borders, but you must understand that there is that fraternity of Marxists that is worldwide, and who view the United States as it exists as an enemy that must be brought down. So you see the Democrats are on board with it because they are now the Democrat Party is the Communist Party of the United States now. That's who's running it. And I know that there are a lot of patriotic Democrats who have no representation anymore within the Democratic Party, but you never hear from them or of them.
Right.
So, the caravans that you're talking about, that came from within here. In fact, you can go to Facebook and you can go to an outfit called Sin Fronteras, S-I-N space Fronteras, and some of their organizers go down there and help out. It's a brotherhood, and it's all put together. And I keep saying that it's Barack Obama who put in all these communists into positions of authorities, judges, everything, anything you could find. A president of the United States can directly appoint 3,000, possibly even to 4,000 persons by himself directly. He can do that. I would say Barack did that. I would say that the attack against Donald Trump was growing by Barack Obama. When they do a real investigation, they're going to find that Barack Obama's dirty little paws are all over that thing, as were Hillary's. Hillary is an outright communist. She was investigated a long time ago. So you had the two comrades there, and she should see some prison time if there is any justice in this country once another investigation is done.
Well, let's go to the Mueller investigation. We've beat on the border a bit, so let's move to the Mueller investigation that started with the Steele dossier that the Hillary campaign and the DNC purchased, and then they didn't verify anything. They went ahead and got the FISA warrants, start spying on people. They want to investigate Trump, and you think he's done something wrong. Okay, I'm okay with that, but don't stop there. Investigate Hillary, investigate Obama, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, all these other people are involved because there's a problem there. Because you got Comey coming out and saying didn't change the verbiage on Hillary's emails to where it was not a criminal offense. And if you're let's face it, you got your server in a closet somewhere in Colorado, and it's not protected or anything, and come on, really? And you can't find anything wrong with that?
Yeah. They worked pretty hard to slide that by, and it's she committed a hideous crime. She did what? She wiped out 30,000 emails. Or those are 30,000 crimes that she was trying to erase and keep from the American people.
Well, then they broke their electronic devices too, the Blackberries and.
Yeah, the disk drives and everything, hard drives. They physically destroyed those things, and of course that's indicative of somebody that's trying to hide something, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And for her to try and hide all of that, and yet I think that there is enough left over to nail her. All that has to happen is to put her on trial for these crimes in real time, over what's really happened, not what has been covered up. And there's a lot. The Clintons are dirty. They are unbelievable people. Unbelievable.
Well, one of the things that was released here not too long ago was one of Peter Strzok's testimonies, where he talked about Hillary's attorneys and DOJ had struck a deal on what the DOJ would let the FBI look at. So, their hands were tied before they started. And Loretta Lynch was the attorney general at the time, so.
Oh, yeah, they had it so. They kept it in-house, but now they're out, and you have, I think Lindsey Graham wants to look into it.
Right.
And I think David Nunes also.
Right.
Does that name ring a bell?
Yep, sure does.
I think that they're going to try and open this up, and I'm curious as to whether they will be able to or not. Lindsey Graham, I hear he has a closeted life. Some people say that he's gay. And I don't know how there would not be a reprisal against him. He has also been on both sides of the issue with respect to illegal immigration. And even as he defends Donald Trump at this moment, he's okay with the Democrats demanding Donald Trump's tax returns. And yet I would like to see tax returns. If they get his, I want to see Chuck Schumer's, Nancy Pelosi's. I want to see Hillary Clinton's tax returns. I want to see all these people's tax returns. If it's good enough for Trump, it ought to be good enough for everybody else.
How about all our representatives in Washington, D.C., the House, the Senate, all of them, because you see so many career politicians go out there at a salary of, $174,000 a year, and they walk out of there millionaires,
Millionaires, yes. I quite agree. I would say that what we have for now in American government is criminal enterprise. And that's the reason that your border remains open. And that's the reason that they don't mind if your child or your wife, or if you're female, your husband gets murdered by an illegal, gets run down by them because they're terrible for drunk driving or murdered. And, the truth of it is that thousands of Americans get murdered every year. Thousands. No exaggeration.
Yes.
And Steve King, the representative from Iowa, he was the first that spoke out about it. And that was a number of years ago when I saw him speak in person at Cashman Center in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the angel moms, the victims of illegal immigration who have gone to see the president, they've stressed the point, hey, look, thousands of us are getting killed by these people every year. Thousands of us. But it's okay with both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party. If we had anything going for us, all of that would have been stopped a long time ago. The borders would be secure. There would be hardly no illegal aliens in here. But factually, when you're looking at the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, I hate to piss off some people, but you're looking at criminal enterprise. This is why we're so miserable. Doesn't matter which way you vote, in one way or another, the result is almost always going to be the same. It's been that way for decades. It's been that way with your taxes, the way that they collect taxes from you, the amount of taxes they collect from you. What they do with taxes now is light years away from how the country was founded and how taxes were intended to be collected.
Absolutely. And, there's the argument to be made for term limits for these people. You should, because when you go to represent your district, whether it's in the Senate or the House, you were there taking time away from your job and your family to go represent the people of your district for a period of time and then go back home. You were not supposed to be a career politician. It was never supposed to be that way. You were not supposed to be a millionaire when you walked out of office 30 years later. But, and like you say, we've gotten so far away from what this country was originally founded on. And it's really sad. And I can sit here and talk about term limits, but you get right down to it, it's the voters. I mean, they voted these people back in. I mean, and let's face it, sometimes when you're a voter and your person who's representing you starts bringing home a bunch of money for your projects that you greatly appreciate in your neighborhood and in your city, you're probably going to vote them back in. And I understand that. But, here again, this job was not supposed to be a career job.
No, it wasn't. It was to serve the people and to serve the country. And now everything's flipped. The people serve the government. I'm afraid that is what it has become. And here again, I grew very frustrated with the Republican Party. I'm a registered Republican. I did it so I could vote for Donald Trump, but I was very angry after George W. Bush failed to do anything about illegal immigration. That was 8 years of Americans dying. Then, I went independent. Then I went Constitution Party. Barack Obama came in. I didn't vote for Barack Obama, of course. I gave him a chance to see, let's see what the heck this guy does. And that was 8 more years of no real enforcement. So we have 16 years where a hideous problem grew. I have a sister who retired as a school teacher. She saw her classroom change from English-speaking American white to third world brown, no English spoken, none, zero.
Wow.
American classrooms have been decimated in California and in other parts of the country, and the politics of race is huge in this country. I'm afraid the wrong people were empowered. I think there should have been, of course, as stated, liberty for everybody. And we were talking about you lost a job to affirmative action or whatever it was, as did I. Mm-hmm. I was very qualified for a job, and yet I am classified a minority, which I don't accept. I'm just a regular guy. For everybody, when they rolled in the 65 Civil Rights Acts and everything, as a young man, I didn't quite understand it. I thought, these black folks, they're getting the short end of the stick or anything. But as an adult, I look at it and I realize that what really happened is that Lyndon Johnson, with the approval of the Republican Party, ended freedom of association and started punishing people if you had a business and you didn't want a certain kind of clientele there, and then racial preferences were set for hiring. As a trained electronics technician, I had a great job. I loved it, but I applied for a job as an electronic communications technician for the city of Los Angeles. Well, the person that got it was a black woman who was a janitor with no training, none whatsoever.
Wow.
I followed up on it. I met her. I went to look at her work. All her work had to be redone because she knew nothing about it, but it was purely political.
Sure.
Excuse me. Allergies out here. So that is, it was not a great step forward for the United States, in my opinion, when the 65 Civil Rights Act was rolled out. It was a step backwards. It was the taking away of freedom that should have been universal. I think that the American people would have solved the problems of giving a good people an opportunity, but we have not had that opportunity. So we're very set back in racial relationships. And I'm fine if you own an auto parts store and I walk in there blabbering in Spanish, which I did one time in California, and the guy threw me out, and I was fine. I was fine with it. I understood where he was coming from. It just happened I was with a woman that spoke Spanish, so
Well,
the guy would.
Hiring people on the merit basis seems to be secondary anymore, and that's not the way it should be. The situation you were talking about there, you got people. Well, look at this college thing that you see all these movie stars caught up in. They bought their way into these colleges because their kids weren't the best in their field. I'm not saying their kids weren't bright, because I'm sure they probably are, but they took it away from somebody else that went out there and bust their ass and then worked to get to that point, and then were denied because of your backdoor cash. So
Exactly. And that system is what affirmative action is and was, and is. And you see the results, Steve. Look at this country now. All of that did not make us stronger. It made us weaker. We're at the point of dissolution, I think, where this country can come apart. And I am of the opinion, to be very candid with you, I think this country's going to bust apart the way the Soviet Union did. We're going to go off into different pieces because we can't even get along anymore. And, well, those were decisions that were made back in time that made the present scenario that is unacceptable to so many of us who love this country. They made it happen.
Sure. And you're talking about George W. I always had a lot higher expectations for him in his second term because I thought he was going to come out and be a lot more conservative, and he let me down on that point. And then we ended up with Barack, and well, there's nothing to be said there. I mean,
what a joke! Barack was and is, but I know a Democratic Socialist activist who adores him. She happens to be white. She happens to have taught at a university. University professor, but she's a communist, and she thinks that he was just wonderful, and she thinks that Obamacare was the greatest thing in the world. But she's a person of privilege. She lives in $1 million home. She has 3 brand new cars, and she's a communist. How do you do that? Communists. Cadillac communists. I told her, why aren't you living out in Chicago, out in the bad section, and distributing 2 of your cars to other people, and taking some of the money from your $1 million home you have here and buy 5 homes for people out there in Chicago, okay? She just laughed. There was no answer. Just laughed.
A little bit of that wealth redistribution we hear so much about. Yeah, go ahead and do that. And it seems kind of funny that the people who are out there preaching wealth redistribution don't distribute any wealth. I mean,
Bernie Sanders is a millionaire, and he's not going to redistribute anything. Hillary Clinton's a multimillionaire. Barack Obama is.
He is now.
They're holding on to their cash. They're not going to give it up, but they'll tell you, socialism is the way to go. And you were talking about, you wanted to hit up on this thing that, what's this guy from New Jersey? I am Spartacus, the black.
Crap.
Cory Booker or something like that.
Cory Booker, that's right.
What a joke this guy is. He's figured out how to take money from everybody else, primarily white people. That's what he's really talking about. and redistributing it to black folks because, reparations, we have to do something to address the evils of white men owning black slaves. And the first slave owner in the United States was a black guy. I forget what his name is.
Hey, I know what you're talking about, and you're right. But yeah, they don't want to talk about that. And the people, how did the slaves get here? They were brought over here from Africa because they were conquered by another tribe and sold to other people. So.
Yeah. Yes, people were regarded as a
commodity.
Yeah, they were exactly what they were. And actually, the first slaves in the United States were white. They were Irish, young Irish. And just a couple of years after that, you had black slaves coming in. But the first were factually white. And then after that, you always had indentured servants, which was a form of slavery anyway.
Sure. And, there's I got an article here from, it's out of the Springfield, Illinois paper, where they're in Florida, they're taking down a Confederate, a statue of a Confederate soldier and moving it from one park to the other because, it's offensive to some people. But you know what? And getting back to reparations, if you're going to erase history, because granted, slavery and this part of our country was kind of a black eye for us, but it happened. It's just the way it was. So if you're going to erase history, erase the whole part about slavery, and we can quit talking about reparations.
Exactly, and they should be factual. Everybody has been a slave. Throughout history, there has been a tremendous number of white slaves. The English took the Irish and turned them into slaves and took some of their women and sent them off to the Caribbean to mate with blacks to produce a hardier type of human being that could work and do things better.
Right.
This is part of what was done. So white men, Asian men, and women, and black men and all that, we have all been subject to slavery throughout the ages, not just the blacks. It makes it seem like America is the only country in the world that visited this harm upon the blacks. And yet a civil war was fought, and thousands of white men died. I don't think the Civil War was fought over slavery, but as an aside, it would turn out that way. Mm-hmm. And blacks were granted their freedom, and the South was put in handcuffs for a long time.
Yep. Let me stop here just a minute, give some shout-outs to some people I see online here. I got Bob Smith, Dave Jameson, Holder's out there this evening. We got Nisley's out there, John Lindley, my wife Deborah's out there. All right, we got a pretty good crowd tonight, Frank, so...
well, that's awesome. What is it? Where are you on Facebook?
On Unleashed Opinion.
Unleashed Opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But yeah, I think in order to watch the comments that we're getting online here, I think you got to watch the show in order to do that. I think on my phone, being an administrator of this site here, I can go through and pull up the comments on there and see them. They're a little bit jumbled up, but I can still figure out what they're talking about. You mentioned earlier Obamacare.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, that was because the healthcare industry is 1/6 of our economy. So, yes. and it was designed to fail so we could have the single payer system run by the government. Mm-hmm. So that was the bottom line. And they said, oh my God, it's going to be cheaper. It's not a tax, but if you don't buy it, we're going to be fined. So, the Supreme Court cleared that up for us. When they went to court with that, they said, well, this thing is going to fail unless you call it a tax. They're like, oh, my God, we're going to call it a tax so it stays implemented. So that's what they did. But, everybody knows it was a tax. It was designed to fail because it was never going to work. Socialized medicine doesn't necessarily work. I mean, you see it in other countries, but then you see other articles, it was in England. I read an article the other day where people were waiting anywhere from 6 months to 3 years for eye surgery because they don't have enough doctors or the line's too long. So, it was designed to fail. It is 1/6 the economy that the government wanted to take over, and they could do with it what they wanted from that point. And you had, IPAD, the Independent Payment Advisory Board, where you had a 15-person panel that was appointed by the president to determine who or what gets what procedure and when. So, it was designed to fail so that they could take over that section of the people, and then one step closer to the socialism or communism, whatever. So
yes, it was and is a disaster, and it should die. But let's see, who's the guy that runs the Senate? What's his face? They call him the Gobbler.
Mitch
McConnell.
Yes.
says that he's not going to work on ending Obamacare. This is something that I heard of. I was in Wyoming when Obamacare came up and the Supreme Court was going to deal with the issue, and I was tuned into the radio with great anticipation. Let's see what the great Supreme Court is going to do with this.
Right.
John Roberts comes prancing out, and he saves Obamacare by saying, well, you can't do it unless it's a tax.
Right.
And it never was declared to be a tax. Never. It was never declared to be a tax. Nevertheless, it was implemented. And I met guys in Wyoming that were fuming because they could not afford to buy the product, and yet they owed money because they didn't buy the product. And this is, a lot of what was going on. It was a huge scam. You know what? I finally lost my faith in the Supreme Court. So right now I have no faith in Congress, no faith in the Supreme Court. And I love Mr. Trump, but I don't know where he's going. It's very easy to criticize him, but no one is in there dealing with the stresses that he has to deal with. It's monumental when you think that you might spend the rest of your days in prison because a crooked Congress is after you, and it isn't just the Democrats. There are Republicans that didn't love him at all. When he ran for the presidency of the United States on the Republican side, you got to see a barrage of clowns who ran up against him, and you could see the Republican Party itself was not in love with him, but the people were.
Right, right.
And he got it over the Republican Party and got to where he's at, but they still have their knives out for him. He knows it. It takes an unusually strong person to put up with what he has put up with. So even though I'm angry that we're 3 years into his administration or his presidency and illegal immigration is worse than ever, I'm willing to give him 3 or 6 more months, and I've discussed this with other people, to see if maybe what I'm looking at here is the same thing that happened to me with George W. Bush. Oh, yeah, he's a Texan. He's going to make it. He was never born in Texas. He was born in Connecticut or something, but plays himself off as a Texan. So the first 4 years, nothing. Remaining 4 years, oh, he's going to do it now. Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Nothing. And I hope that's not what I'm looking at here, but I've already been burned. So
right. So you're twice shy.
Yeah.
And you're right about Trump. A lot of Republicans don't like him either, still don't, because he come in and wrecked the establishment. He upset the whole apple cart. That was not in their plans for a career politician for that to ever happen. As far as him being a strong man, he's got to be. He's tough. I mean, look at the people in his administration. They serve for 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years, and they're like, you know what, I'm getting out of this, because it's brutal. I mean, let's face it, the politics out there is brutal, and he's standing up there every day and spouting off at the mouth, which sometimes I wish he'd just shut up, and just deal with some issues. When he's on script, he does good. When he starts getting off the cuff, he calling people's names, I understand that. I understand his frustration. I understand getting on Twitter because he's going around the media. But you know what? You're still the president. You still should be presidential. Here again, there's just times he needs to shut up. It's not that I necessarily disagree with what he says. It's so much of the way he says it.
I got to tell you that I disagree with you. I find it refreshing that he does do unpresidential things and comes across just like a regular guy. And I like that because it's a form of communication that we've never had before. I understand about being very presidential and all of that. And, it's a show at this moment. And I don't know if the presidency of Donald Trump is going to be the closing act in America. I really don't know. There is so much that is happening. So much damage has been done to this country. We're thick with traitors in Congress or otherwise. We wouldn't have the problems that we have because they would feel for this country. They would act on behalf of people like you and I and our families and be one with the true American people. I'm not talking about Somalians that they import in the middle of the night and drop off in Minnesota so they can elect somebody like Ilhan Omar. I'm talking about the real American people, and it ain't happening. What does that tell me? Is that we're knee-deep in traitors, that the majority of those people in Congress are traitors, and our government is a criminal entity, and it has an adversarial relationship with the American people whom they are willing to sacrifice for whatever they, the elite, want. And to me, that's very obvious.
That really baffles me, too, as how people are willing to sacrifice. And I'm looking at particularly at the Second Amendment and the First Amendment, because you see that gal on CNN was talking to James Comey the other day, and she says, well, when the people were out there chanting about Hillary, saying, lock her up, why didn't you stop that? Well, you know what? You still have the First Amendment, and if you want to go down that road, how come you're not saying the same thing, asking James Comey the same thing about when they're bashing Donald Trump and all his people? You know, it's a one-sided deal, and I don't know how, of course it's CNN, how she gets off with saying something like that when the First Amendment gives her the privilege to get on national TV and spout her stuff anyway. So, you know, this First Amendment goes two ways, and we're not going to retain that thing without the Second Amendment. So where she gets off talking, asking James Comey something stupid like that just completely baffles me.
Oh, it is astounding. And one of the things that this president has achieved that I have never seen before is when he labeled it all the fake news. That has stuck with everybody because we all know that it's fake. You know, you get some of your good information, a lot of it through the internet, through citizen reporters like yourself. Thank you for what you're doing. And also Fox News to some degree, though it's beginning to lean left a whole lot. Just look at what they did to Judge Janine.
And hired Donna Brazile, yes.
Yes.
That was a kick in the ass there. That just baffled me, too. And the Judge Janine, because we played that clip, she was asking about that the gal's loyalty, where it lies. It wasn't calling her a traitor or anything like that. She wasn't calling her, wanting Sharia law. She just wanted to know where her loyalties lied. And next thing you know, she's suspended, and they bring Donna Brazile in, who gave the questions to Hillary Clinton prior to the debate. That just completely baffles me.
Yeah, well, Fox News was formerly owned by Rupert Murdoch, and now his sons are running it, and they're far more left-leaning than their dad ever was, and that's where we're at with our news. So stay tuned and see what happens next.
Absolutely. Frank, we're out of time already. That didn't take long to burn that hour, did it?
No, we did good. You did very good. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, you know what? It's great having you on the air. You seem to be a lot better versed at this than I am. You've done a lot more things. You've been to the border. You've been to talk to these politicians. I've not done all those things because I was not following things that close for a while. It's really great to have you on the show. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Absolutely, sir. It's been a pleasure for me. Thank you so much, and keep doing it.
Yeah, you too. Keep doing what you're doing. And I'll tune your show's Radio X on Sunday evening.
Radio X, Sunday evenings, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Okay. And that's Facebook Live also, correct?
Sure. That's all I can afford.
I hear you. Hey, we got Justin Savage and Doug Gooding out there this evening, too. Okay. And Dan Lennings, too. So, again, Frank, thank you very much. We'll do this again. It's been super talking to you. Our viewers don't know that we had spoken once on the phone prior to this show, and a couple messages prior to that. So this is our actual first conversation, and it's went very good as far as I'm concerned. So it's been really great having you on.
Thank you, sir.
When, like I say, we'll do it again, and we'll wrap this thing up. And as usual, I'll close with our usual. Oh, well, I got to thank everybody out there watching this evening with your comments online here. Greatly appreciated. All the people that are tuning in, making comments, giving us some ideas to what to talk about. Makes my end of this job a lot easier. Again, Frank, thank you very much. Remember, folks, if you love your country, you love your freedom, thank a veteran. Thanks for tuning in, and may God bless. We'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
See you, Frank.